Your husband?
I hear that the bar has been raised on the Devar today,
I understand that.
and
Oh my goodness.
someone came to give me
Oh,
a
here
little
we
bit of
go.
help.
Surprise.
I'm afraid I don't have the talent with the puppets, nor the chutzpah that my husband has, so I hope that you'll all just enjoy my message.
And I see you have an assistant.
Yes, Ronan, Mama's going to start. Have a seat. Shabbat Shalom. It is always a great honor to be asked to share words of Torah with you at this very special Shabbat service. This year in particular, with the service being dedicated to our dear friend and sister, Beverly, Alea Shalom, it holds even greater meaning for me. Beverly and I would exchange numerous texts each year in advance of the service, both of us preparing and a little nervous about what we had to complete. I've missed her, as I know all of you have as well, and I dedicate these words of Torah to her. I want to talk to you today about leading to success. Congratulations, you did it. You got that promotion, you have a new title, new business cards, a new office. Now what? People believe that the clothing or the badge or the office, the title, are all important things that make you a leader. All these things are important, but they aren't what make one a leader. The expensive suit doesn't make you ethical or morally sound. The shiny badge doesn't mean you deserve respect. The big office doesn't make you someone that others will listen to and want to learn from. These are perhaps things that generate confusion by being the front pieces, but they actually have nothing to do with us understanding what makes someone an effective leader. It's true that the Torah assigns specific acknowledgments to leaders. In this week's Parsha Tetzaveh, we see that the Kohen Gadol had special clothing, and Moses had a special staff, and so on. But those came after these people demonstrated their qualities of leadership. In this generation, many people confuse something that was always intended to be a tool with the reality of the position. It is not a coincidence that in today's world we see an abundance of coaches or experts and countless books and other resources to help people rediscover the essence of leadership. The interesting thing is that the Torah already outlined many of the principles that any good coach will teach us thousands of years ago. Most business coaches highlight key aspects lacking in today's leaders, which lead to chaos and confusion. These include a lack of communication, lack of a clear vision, poor execution, or fear of conflict. The fact is, far too many people place the emphasis on the title and not on the actual responsibilities that go along with it. I had a really tough year at work last year. It started New Year's Eve 2017 at 11:38 p.m. I got an email from a physician colleague who works in a remote location saying that they had an outbreak of a highly infectious pathogen in a small community that was already quite vulnerable for many reasons. He asked if we could provide a very specific type of support for this community. My amazing team that I've worked with for over the last 9 years has developed a toolkit of sorts. This was based on our work in remote, vulnerable, at-risk populations in Africa, largely affected by the HIV epidemic. We developed novel, innovative testing strategies, methods of engagement with various cultures that are safe, sensitive, and appropriate, ways of providing training, and ultimately capacity building, which allows the community to take ownership of many of these approaches. At the end of the day, we increased the number of people getting diagnosed for various infections and helping facilitate linkage to care and support. So this physician contacted me looking for similar support for this hard-hit community. Within 3 days, we had a staff member flying in to meet this physician and then go in the community in question and establish a plan for support. It was remarkable and well received by community members. Fast forward a few weeks. Everyone else was returning from winter vacations and starting to catch up on emails, and they see the slew of back and forth messages and actions that had occurred during their break. Well, noses got out of joint, egos inflated, and some who felt they were overstepped and not in the forefront of all the so-called fame of the operation started to quickly put up barriers and create problems, which made for a very stressful environment that was allowed to continue for an entire year. This was really the result of the lack of effective leadership. Someone needed to put an end to the bullying behaviors and allow for clear and efficient execution of vision. They needed to step in and instead of trying to please everyone, just do what was best for the community and within mandated activities. The failure to do this permitted a very toxic environment that flourished far too long until finally we took matters into our own hands and removed ourselves from the activities. I learned a lot during this year about myself, about my values, about what I needed to keep in mind as I transitioned into my new role in senior management. I realized that some of the things I did really dedicate the time and energy to communicate to staff openly and transparently, or to get into the fight when needed to support my staff. These were important leadership qualities that are critical to the success of our work. I'm fortunate that the director I've worked with over the years embodies many of these qualities, which has allowed our division to flourish and be the envy of others. We're working to introduce things to Indigenous communities in an effort to eliminate health inequities, and there are going to be bumps. But there are bumps that we need to navigate, and we need to do so sensitively and sensibly. To have poor leaders in other areas put up barriers is something that can't and shouldn't be tolerated. Ultimately, it's to the detriment of the communities who desperately need equitable access to services. I think that many of the traits I try to demonstrate and implement come from our teachings in the Torah. We have many examples to learn from that were the traits of our ultimate leader, Moshe. The first is efficient communication. This week's Parsha, Tetzaveh, starts with the following words: "You shall instruct the Israelites." We can see how Moshe was tasked with instructing the people, and effective methods of communication were critical to the success of his mission to communicate the will of God. We can see that Moshe was expected to communicate important information, but there were no instructions to him on how to do this. The truth is that a good leader can always find the way. There is not a one-size-fits-all model, but rather an effective leader will know his audience and find the best way to interact with them. We have the proof that Moshe was successful. The fact that we are here together today and every week reading the Torah, this shows us that Moshe indeed found an effective method of communicating to us. The Torah says that Moshe did it from a place of humility. Nobody in Jewish history reached the spiritual heights in proximity to Hashem like Moshe. But the higher he ascended, the more humble he became. The problem with many modern leaders is that the higher they go, the more arrogant they become, the more inflated the ego becomes, and this puts up barriers between them and the ones they are leading. Other important leadership qualities include having a clear vision, and linked to this, the ability to execute the vision effectively. A leader must remember that it's no longer their individual agenda and wishes that are the source of motivation. Rather, it is the larger goal of the group, the people that the leader is guiding and supporting, and that all the perspectives and goals must be considered. Again, we turn to lessons from Moshe. Moshe was the one who led us out of Egypt. He had the qualities of leadership, of uniting the whole, of having a very clear vision of what had to happen, and an effective means of executing it. Had this not been true, we would all still be wandering in the desert. Moshe was the only one who maintained the vision of reaching the promised land. So when everyone else faltered, had doubts, and wanted to give up, Moshe continued to remind everyone of the goal and find ways to motivate them to continue to reach it. As I mentioned earlier in discussing last year and some of my challenges, it was very apparent to me just how important it is to have skills in conflict resolution, and for one in a position of leadership to not shy away from conflict when necessary, to confront difficult situations with the goal of finding a solution and putting an end to distress. Once again, Moshe, our greatest leader, we can see his method of how he recognized the need to get into difficult situations and confront conflict in order to achieve the end goal. An excellent example of this can be seen in Bamidbar, the book of Numbers. We read about Korach and his followers creating an uprising, a rebellion, to challenge Moshe's leadership. The rabbis say Korach did this from a place of arrogance and inflated ego. They wanted to be the leaders, just for the sake of importance, rather than truly possessing the qualities and abilities to be effective leaders. Moshe was ready to face the challenge. He was ready to have the difficult conversation, to confront them, discuss, and put an end to the rebellion. But the truth is, Korach didn't rise to the challenge. Moshe wanted to show Korach all the gifts and honors bestowed upon them. He wanted to say, "You've got an important role. You are blessed with gifts," and ask them why they wanted power that they weren't equipped to manage. But Korach wouldn't meet and succeed the challenge. Moshe had all the powers to shut them down and give instructions to eliminate them, but instead he approached them with the wish to discuss, have that uncomfortable conversation, in an effort to find a peaceful reconciliation. He wasn't afraid to confront the conflict. At the end of the day, we are all leaders of some sort, in some aspect of our lives. For many of us, it's at home. Let us take these qualities and use them in a humble but effective way. Let us not be afraid of having the difficult conversation with our partners, our children, our grandchildren, but instead, let us use the opportunity to motivate them so that they can be their best. I'd like to finish with a quote from Pirkei Avot 4:1. Ben Zoma said, "Who is honored? One who honors others." In this week's Parsha, Moshe was instructed to make the regal clothing for his brother Aaron in order to clothe him in honor and splendor. We have an example of brothers who celebrate and honor each other instead of living with jealousy and competition and sibling rivalry. Let us learn and implement many of Moshe's qualities and lessons, and ultimately honor our brothers and sisters by celebrating their unique gifts. And let us recognize that they do not diminish our own. Shabbat Shalom.